My guest today is Simon Catt, founder of Arlington Asset Management, which is a London-based firm. And Simon himself has originated over £3 billion worth of deals over his career. Simon, lovely to see you. How are you?
Dannika, good morning. Nice to be here. This is my first ever podcast. I'm excited.
Well, I guess to give people some background, what is it that your parents would say that you do?
What my parents say. You know what? I'll give you another answer. Not my parents, but I remember when I first met my wife. She asked me the same question. She said, "What do you do?" And I said, "I'm in sales." She said, "Oh, I'm in sales as well," and we left it at that. And that she didn't actually know that we then got together, been together 8 years, had a couple of kids, and it's only about 5 years later she came back and heard me talking about what I did with people at dinner. And she said, "I didn't know that's what you did," because I am in sales, and from the point of view that I sell securities to people, but actually it's a little bit more nuanced than that.
Mm-hmm. And so you're in capital markets then, I guess, to put it broadly. What influenced you to get into capital markets? Did you always want to be in that field?
So my grandfather was a wonderful old gentleman named Louis Goldman. And when we used to go and stay at Granny's house in South Perth, Grandpa used to get up in the morning and disappear at about 9 o'clock in the morning. And he used to go to work, in inverted commas. I think what that meant was he got on the ferry and crossed from South Perth into Perth City, and he went and saw his stockbroker and his lawyer and his property guy. And we didn't really know what Grandpa did, except that he went off to work and just disappeared for a few hours. But he didn't actually have a job. He was just tending to his investments. And then Grandpa, I used to ask him what he did and where he used to go, and he started to teach me about the stock market, and I was always fascinated about that. And so it was an interest, a spark that started with discussions with my grandpa about what he did.
Do you remember what he was investing in?
Yeah, when he died, we found the answer to that. And we never knew that he had nearly as many investments as he had. And he had property spread around Perth, including the house where we used to go and visit and that they lived. It was the only house left in the high-rise apartments that line the South Perth foreshore. It was the only house nestled in between these 30-story apartment blocks on either side. So he always believed in investing in location for property. But the shares he used to invest in, they were the mining companies, the same ones that as Australians we've all heard of. BHP, the world's largest mining company, Western Mining Corporation, which was bought by BHP, and another more infamous one, Bond Corporation, which by the time we opened up the safety deposit box, that wasn't worth anything. But there was actually millions of dollars worth of BHP and Western Mining, which he was a very frugal man. They used to collect the foil milk tops that come off of a milk bottle. That used to be what my brother and I used to play with in the spare room. There was like gigantic garbage bags full of foil milk bottle tops. And they collected them for 60 years. They never threw anything away. Grandpa used to, when I gave my clothes away, Grandpa recycled my old shoes as I grew out of them as a 16-year-old. He wore them. He collected a lot of shares, BHP, Western Mining being the most important.
That would have been a wonderful parting gift and a wonderful surprise in amongst all the milk top bottles.
Yeah, well, it was really important for my parents. It enabled them because they had gone bankrupt it was in the mid-80s, their business, which was making furniture, had gone bankrupt. And so it was actually a very lucky boon to them that Grandpa died and he left his assets equally between my mum and her sister and my grandmother. So that enabled them to get a start and to get on the property ladder through the super cycle, which was a good thing to do in West Australia, and so they managed to become independently financially comfortable after that.
So you've been in capital markets for about 30 years almost. You've no doubt seen some pretty interesting things in that time. What have you learned about people?
What have I learned about people? I think that Warren Buffett says that people, you have to be greedy when others fearful, and fearful when others are greedy. And I think that the capital markets are really the study of human behavior and understanding how human emotion is priced in, and risk is priced. So I think what you learn about people is how they react to emotional stress and how that manifests itself in their behavior in chasing financial wealth through capital markets.
Absolutely, that's fascinating. So, what do you look for when you're considering an investment personally?
I've made so many mistakes and lost so many fortunes. I think it's easier to make money and harder to hang on to it. I think the most important, well, not the equal most important thing in evaluating an investment is the price that you buy into the investment at, and the people that are then running that company or administering that asset. Those, I think, and of course the asset itself. So when we think about an investment, it starts with the quality of the asset, then you have to make sure you're buying it at the right price, and then you have to make sure that the management team, the people that are actually extracting value from that their interests are aligned with yours and that they know what they're doing.
And when you say that it's easier to make money than to hold on to it, is that because once you've made money, you always want to make more? So you just don't want to put it into something conservative. You actually want to go, okay, let's keep going. Or is it more your background in mining and having more of a risk tolerance?
Yeah. I would say I think the cyclicality of the stock market and of the commodity cycle are really important answers to that question. That you have to remember, there's a saying that you rent commodity stocks, you don't own them. This is not, you don't. If we could go back in time, we could all buy Apple after the dot-com crash of 1999, 2000. That would have probably been the best thing we could have done with our money. And maybe today or in the last year or so, that those companies would have been sales. So maybe you should have held those, the Microsofts and the Apples, the Amazons, the biggest, most valuable companies in the world today. Maybe we should have all bought those and held those 20 years ago. But without actually knowing what the return on BHP is over 20 years, I would suggest that you wanted to try and time the cycle. So my investment instincts have always been cyclical, which is, and over time I think I try and take Warren Buffett's advice, which is, when you buy into a company, like imagine that you're going to own it for 10 years, rather than sell it tomorrow because it's gone up 10%.
So long term rather than short term trading.
Well, it's the combination of both. It's trying to hold on to your winners, which is not easy if they've gone up 2 or 3 times, but also to remember to sell them because, and to try and evaluate when all of the good news that you think that you know about is in the price. And then if you're early into the investment, the challenge is that other people might only just becoming aware of what you think you know. So you have to try and put yourself in the heads of the rest of the world.
I never know when to sell. I just buy and then hang on to them, and then they go up, and then they come back down. I'm like, should have sold.
Tesla is an interesting example, right? It's Elon Musk is always in the news, buying Twitter this week. I talked my son Oliver, who also invests, because he listens to me talk about investment, and we've had a phantom portfolio, more recently an actual portfolio for Oliver, who's 16. For about the last 8 years or so. And so we used to go down to in the Westfield shopping centre in Shepherd's Bush, which is 15 minutes in a taxi from my house in Marylebone in London. We used to go down to the Westfield shopping centre and we watch a movie, we have some lunch, and invariably we go to the Tesla showroom. And Ollie and I would love sitting in the Tesla and playing with it, and we talk to the people about, the car and what it does and how you can charge it for 12 cents. And I even humoured Ollie and his friend one day. We took it for a test drive. I wasn't planning to buy a Tesla, but just for fun, we took it for a test drive, and it was amazing. And after that, Ollie said, Dad, I want to buy some Tesla. And we said, okay, well, let's have a think about that. This is amazing. This is like five or so years ago. So let's have a think about that. Let's look at Tesla. Let's see how many cars they produce. They were producing 10 or 20,000 cars a year at that time. And I said, well, let's compare it to Volkswagen. Volkswagen, one of the world's largest car makers, they make about 10 million cars a year. Let's look at the relative valuation of Tesla and Volkswagen. Volkswagen, having just suffered from Dieselgate, was down by 30% or so. And I talked Oliver out of buying Tesla and into buying Volkswagen. So he did that, and we made 10-15% or something on buying some Volkswagen shares, and then we both watched Tesla go up about 10 times over the last 5 or so years. And so if you ask Ollie, what's the number one investment lesson you've learned, he said, don't trust Dad. Correct, Ollie. And anything else? He said, got to do your own work. Got to do your own work. Don't listen to what other people tell you. Have your own conviction and stick with them. And actually, you know what? A couple of years ago, I set him down and we do homework together. He comes to my office and we go and analyze some shares, and we really had to read a balance sheet and a profit and loss. And he decided he wanted to buy some Apple computer, and he was right.
He sounds brilliant. He's going to maybe take over the firm.
He's much more sensible than I am, yeah.
So talking about Arlington, your model seems to be that you take a stake in a company, get actively involved in making it a success. Has there ever been a time where you've thought, shit, I really stuffed up here and I'm not sure how I'm going to recover?
Yes, I'm in the middle of one of those at the moment. I'm not going to give you the name because it's a listed company. At the moment I've got, and Arlington has many millions of dollars invested in this company, in this asset, and I'm trying to evaluate whether we should throw good money after bad, whether those three things that we spoke about, my starting point is I love the asset. The two questions which I'm trying to answer right now is, what do we think about management and the capability to unlock the value of that asset? And then in terms of the capital structure and therefore the valuation, the question is, how much more money and time will this asset need to blossom, to exhibit its full value? And I'm trying to answer that in a short time at the moment. So and I find also I have a different perspective depending on my emotional state of mind. I have my optimistic state of mind, and I don't know if you find this, Dannika, but if I'm rested and energized and I've been to the gym or I've gone for a run, I'm optimistic and happy. And if I'm short of sleep and I'm feeling a little bit down, then the answer might be a different answer. So then that's back to this point that as a human being, you assess these investment concepts through the prism of your own prejudice and experience and your emotional state of mind, which itself varies on the day.
So say this, say everything goes badly. You're down to your last $10. How would you spend it or invest it?
Oh, that's easy. I just invite my family and maybe a couple of close friends out to dinner or lunch and leverage
it somehow.
And just it reminds
me.
Get
them to pay.
So I don't know. Do you remember the global financial crisis?
Yes.
So I was at that time running a investment bank. It was a Canadian investment bank named GMP, and we had an office on Albemarle Street in London, which is.
Well, we worked there together. I worked in the Perth office.
Exactly. You worked in the Perth office, and I was in London office, and it was a small office. And my CEO, who's become a dear friend, was over visiting from Canada, and the S&P the night that we're all sitting around the office. And we had a dinner plan that evening to have the London office and our Canadian CEO go out to have dinner. The S&P that night opened down 9%, and we sat there in the office until market close, and they looked at each other and thought, wow, tomorrow there may be no business. We might not even need to come to work tomorrow. So what did we do? We said, well, let's go out and have a really nice dinner and order a really nice bottle of wine, because we've got no idea what's going to happen tomorrow. The financial world as we know it may have ended, but hell, let's park that. Let's not worry about it. Let's just go and enjoy ourselves. So that's, if I had that for my last $10, I'll go and have a really nice bottle of wine with some friends and family and have a nice meal.
Yeah, well, they say there's no point worrying about things you can't control.
Exactly.
So you touched on this before, saying, you know, when you're in a rested state, you feel great, and you have a really punishing, you know, work, travel, fitness, family schedule. What's the key to not burning out for you and getting too stressed?
That's easy. It is not worrying about the stuff you can't control. Asking yourself every day what you're doing and making sure that that day you're doing exactly what you want to be doing. And if you're not doing it, don't do it. So don't do what you think other people want you to do. Do what you actually want to do, and make sure that you make time every day. I do. And my meditation time is actually the same as my exercise time. So for an hour or two every day, I make sure that I have time to exercise, and that's when I meditate and reflect. And I find that the answers to the problems that are in my head, you know, the issues of the day, whatever they may be, it might be an investment, it might be a family situation, it might be somebody I'm trying to help, they come to me at that time. And so for me, you've got to carve out an hour or two each day for yourself, so that you can make sure that you're doing what you want to do and get your head straight on your priorities for that day.
I agree. I think if you're not having fun, then what's the point? You know, you've always got to be able to have some sort of fun element in it, even if it's like the people that you choose to work with. I think it's really important to protect your energy, and if someone's depleting you, then just choose not to work with those people if you can.
Yeah, because if you're not physically and mentally robust, then you can't help other people. You can't do whatever it is that you're trying to do. So you've got to make yourself whole first. Yeah.
And I know that you're a bit of a fan of swimming in freezing water.
Oh, I love that.
Is there anything else that you do that makes you feel alive and motivated?
Yeah, my favorite things to do, I mean, that's put exercise and well-being into one bucket. So that's a starting point. You have to start with that foundation. What I used to think that I got my most pleasure out of working hard and partying hard in my 20s and 30s, and I'm now 50 years of age, Dannika. And you know what? The things that I most enjoy these days, when I think really hard about what it is that gives me the most pleasure, it's spending time with my children.
Yeah.
And so these days, you know, I make sure wherever possible when I'm in town, I'm not traveling, that I tell our nanny I'm taking the kids to school, and I'll take my 2 and my 4-year-old, walk across Marylebone to their friend's school on the other side of Marylebone, and then walk from there into my office in Mayfair. So, and make sure I'm home for story time.
Yeah.
We have so much fun reading stories. So that, yeah, it's spending time with my children and my family.
Yeah. And on that, I guess, sort of tying into the legacy element, if you could be remembered for one thing, what would it be?
Same thing. It would be being a great father, and helping people and communities that have less. That started with, you know, I think that probably you and I and most people that we know, we're in the Lucky Sperm Club. We come from great families in great countries and cities. We have great friends, and you know, every day I think about, you know, I was on a train platform in Dresden on my way to Berlin airport a month ago, and there was a young lady there struggling up the stairs with a bag, and she said, "Hey, can you help me?" I said, "Sure," and we helped her lift her bag up to the platform. And it was one of those refugees stripy Hessian sack bags. And I said, "You look like you've got a lot of stuff in there. Where are you coming to and going from?" And she said, "Oh, I'm from Ukraine. I've just come from Eastern Ukraine." And I said, "Wow, and your family are back there still, some of them, I suppose?" She said, "Yeah, they are. And Russia's using chemical weapons." So I think about how lucky I am each day, and so I think, as well as being a great father, then I would like to make a difference for for people that don't have as much and start with a much less advantaged life. So I don't know exactly what that means yet in terms of which communities specifically. I mean, I work with different charities, help out at the local food bank and things, but there's a bigger callings in the back of my mind. I'm still working that out.
So shifting gears a bit, what do you think the world's going to look like in 5 years? Versus what do you think the world's going to look like in 50 years?
50 years, I've got no idea. I'll be 100 and I think.
Well, you've only been here for 50 years.
Yeah. I think we'll all live longer and be healthier. And I'm assuming that modern medicine will come up with new body parts and things. So instead of having to wear glasses, I'll have some new eyes, for example, which would be great because glasses are a pain. I think we all think about things like climate change and what will that mean, this planet that we're unsustainably using. What does that mean in terms of its longevity and all of our longevity? I think we're all right to be concerned about things like the overuse of finite resources and how can we do that more sustainably. I think that's important. So that's on the very long term. I don't have any answers about what the world looks like in 50 years' time. In terms of the 5-year horizon, I think we are going to become more national. We are going to be more concerned about, rather than the globalization, I think we have this retreat from globalization, have this regionalization for the next 5 years. And because, as in the 70s and the 1940s, inflation is here to stay, I think that has profound implications for capital markets and for what we should invest in. It's people have to get less with tougher times, with less with capital markets being more unkind in the next 5 years.
So, and what's next for you personally?
Next for me personally, more of the same. Building our business at Arlington with my partner Charlie, who's a dear friend and a professional partner for life. We have just bought a house in Italy, so we'd be spending more time in Italy. And longer term, it's nice to be back here in Sydney. I'd like to spend more time here, even though it's a bit grey and rainy today.
Yeah, shame about the weather. It's very London-esque, isn't it?
Yeah.
So where do we find you online for people wanting more information?
I think come through my work website, Arlington Group Asset Management in London. So the website is agamformother.co.uk. Perfect.
Okay, we'll speak to you again soon.
Thanks, Dannika.
You decide if you're gonna let me know.